All right, welcome to episode 9 of the Pops and Drops podcast.
What up, people?
Yeah. You know what episode 9 means? It means we're above average.
That's cool.
we are past the average number of podcasts that new podcasters release.
Nice.
Today, I thought we would talk a little bit about pachinko. And I'll tell you why in a minute. But with everybody, lots of folks at home doing homeschooling, thought we could spend a tiny bit of time talking about statistics.
Okay.
So, we have Marge. You know Marge.
The goat?
Yeah, we have a goat named Marge.
Yes.
Have you ever heard of Marge and Avera?
Is this an episode that's just going to be filled with dad jokes?
Maybe. Do you know who that is?
Like a margin of error?
Yes, exactly. So
nice try, bro.
I almost got you. Thanks to Click and Clack. Shout out to the Car Talk boys. There are political articles in newspapers and news stories all the time talking about polls, and they all cite the margin of error.
Okay.
Do you know what the margin of error means?
It is, well, it depends on what you're in regards to the statistics or in regards to.
So a political poll appears in a newspaper article and it says Biden 52, Trump 46 with a margin of error of 3.5%. Yeah. What does the 3.5% mean?
It means that it could be off by 3.5%.
Okay.
Correct?
Almost. So what the technical definition of a margin of error also has a confidence level, and they normally use the 95% confidence level. So they'll say plus or minus 3.5% at the 95% confidence level.
Okay.
So let's dig into what that actually means and why the polls are wrong. Okay?
All right, go ahead.
Okay. So do you know what a pachinko machine is?
Yes.
Okay. For those who don't know what a pachinko machine is, it's kind of like an upright pinball machine. It has a lever that pulls back a plunger that has a spring, and it launches the ball up along a track. The ball goes up to the top of a playing field. The playing field has a bunch of pins, and it has different holes in it. And the ball goes up, and it bounces around among the pins, and if it falls into one of the holes, you get points, right? There's like a 10-point hole, there's a 50-point hole, 25.
It's the wall on NBC with Chris Hardwick.
Okay. All right. So, imagine that you shot a pachinko ball 1,000 times, and you recorded where every one of those, the outcome of every one of those shots. So you had line paper, and you numbered the line paper 1 to 1,000, and on the first pull it went up and it didn't go in any holes, so you got a 0. And then the second one, it went up and it bounced around, so on the second line of your paper you recorded it went in the 10-point hole, right? You got me? So 1,000 shots, and for every shot you're recording exactly what happened.
Okay.
All right. The 1,000 shots is the total population of shots for that player. Okay?
Uh-huh.
And if you go through all 1,000 lines on your paper and you calculate the percentage of time that, say, the ball went in the 25-point hole. So you could say, I did 1,000 shots, 68 times it went in the 25-point hole. So that's 6.8% of the time you got 25 points. That's truth. Okay? Think of that as the truth.
Okay.
1,000 shots for player A, and with this machine, 6.8% of the time, that player got 25 points. Now, you've got your 1,000 pulls recorded on paper.
Uh-huh.
If you write down the numbers 1 to 1,000 on little chips of paper and you put them in a hat and you shake it up, and so you've got a bucket or a hat, and the papers with the 1 through 1,000 are randomly distributed throughout the bucket, and you pull out 100 numbers of the 1 to 1,000, and then you go over to your record of 1,000 pulls, and you write down what happened on each of those 100 numbers that you pulled out. So the first one you pulled out might be 3. So you go to line 3 on the paper, and on line 3 it went in the 10% hole. And then you pull out number 17, and on the 17th line of your paper it didn't do anything, so you got a 0. So anyway, you pull a sample of 100 from your total population, and you recalculate based on those 100 of the 1,000 what percentage of the time it went in the 25% hole. Now, you know the truth is 6.8%, right? But you're going to recalculate how many times it went in the 25% hole for the 100 sample that you pulled.
Uh-huh.
All right. So if it went in the 25-point hole 4 of the 100 times, that's 4%.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so the truth is 6.8, and the percentage from your 100 random sample is 4.
Okay.
You repeat that process 100 times. The pulling of the paper. You take 100 random samples and you recalculate how often the 25-point hole went in. The ball went in the 25-point hole. Okay, so now you've got, in the first random sample it was 4, in the second random sample it might be 7, in a third random sample it might be 3. So you've got 100 different pulls.
Yep.
100 different sample pulls from the 1,000 truth total population. All right.
And every time you pull that, you remove the initial paper.
No, it all goes back in. You're taking a fresh sample of 100 from the total 1,000.
Why would you put the paper back in?
Because that's random sampling. You put the paper back in the hat each time,
Uh-huh.
and you repull. This is an experiment you could actually do at home and learn how sampling statistics works. All right, so now you've got 100 samples, and you write down. You know how to build a histogram. You essentially tally how many times you get each percentage. So, when you did 100 random samples, you might have got 4
Okay.
3 times, you might have got 5 6 times, you might have got 6 7 times, and anyway, you tally up the number of times that you got each of those things. Okay. Now, the 95% confidence level of plus or minus 3.5% is basically the range of those 100 samples where 95% of those 100 samples fall. Does that make sense?
Okay. Sort of.
Okay, so you did your random sample 100 times.
Yep.
One of the times you pulled a random sample, you might have seen 16 of the 100 that fell into the 25% hole, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that's probably going to be an outlier.
Yeah.
If 6.8% is truth, that's how many times it actually went out of the 1,000 pulls. When you do 100 random samples of that population, you're likely going to end up with 95% of those 100, 95 of the 100 random samples are going to fall between, say, 4 and 7.
Okay.
Okay, so that's where you get your confidence interval.
Uh-huh.
At the 95%. What is the range that if you repeated the process 100 times, that you would
get roughly the same results?
Well, the range is If you did not the same results,
I said roughly.
right? Essentially, it's
Yeah.
what is the range of percentages from the samples that include 95 of the 100 sample polls.
Okay.
So essentially, that is where they arrived at the statistical rules that they use to determine that confidence interval.
Okay.
They did it with pachinko machines, they did it with manufacturing processes. So if you ran 1,000 car hoods through an assembly line, say if you ran 1,000 car hoods through an assembly line, and then you looked at all 1,000 car hoods and you figured out how many of them had paint defects.
Yeah.
Okay, that would be the truth for that population. 1,000 car hoods. If 100 of the 1,000 had paint defects, the truth would be 10%.
Okay.
If you then went back and took samples of 100 of the 1,000 and figured out how many of the samples had paint defects, what you would tend to find is that that range on the car hoods was very close to the same range you'd see with the pachinko balls.
Okay.
And over time, they repeated this process enough times that they said, okay, well, there's some kind of statistical rule, some kind of underlying rule of distributions where if you get 380 observations in your sample for a total population that's over 2,000, then you can be pretty confident that 95% of the time, the truth will lie somewhere plus or minus 3.5% with a sample size of 380. And as you go up to higher and higher samples, if you took if you surveyed 1,000 people out of 2,000, then the sampling range would be smaller. The confidence interval would be smaller.
Okay.
All right. If you think about it intuitively, if your total population is only 2,000 and you're sampling half of them, chances are pretty good that if you do 100 samples of 1,000 people out of 2,000 and you do it over and over and over again,
Yeah.
you're going to get pretty close to what's true.
Okay.
Right. The power of statistics is because they've done those experiments since the 1800s, and probably the ancient Greeks actually probably did it, and we didn't get passed down to us. But it's a pretty straightforward mathematical process. If you've got a consistent, observable process of some kind that produces, widgets or whatever, or ships or whatever you're building, and you get a percentage of defects in your total output, you can go back and sample those repeatedly from the same set, and you'll start to see this pattern emerge where the truth, what you know, because you're looking at the total population, lies somewhere in that range.
Okay.
And that's what the 95% confidence level means is if you'd repeated the process 100 times, 95 out of those 100 times, the truth, which you know, in this case, would fall somewhere between this range.
Okay.
Now, what political polling does is it leverages that understanding, and it basically says that if you can random sample from a total population, then, and you get a percentage,
Yeah.
then you can build that range of three, depending on how many people are in your survey. You can build that range around the result you get from your one survey, and the truth should lie somewhere in that range. All right. Here's the problem. We might go back to our pachinko machine, right? Your 1,000 pulls are from player A. If player B comes and he pulls the pachinko bar 1,000 times, his results could be very different because of the way that he pulls the lever or whatever, how long he holds it down. Understand? So player A does not necessarily represent player B.
Okay.
All right. Now, if you think about it in terms of political polling, let's say player A represents the total population, the average, let's say, likely voter. So player A is likely voter. Player B, when they do the polling, that's not who they talk to. They talk to player B. And player B is the person who answers the telephone when the number is an unrecognized number.
Okay. So
All
what's
right.
your point?
Player B is not the same as player A. But what they do in the press is they assume that player B is player A. They tell you that Joe Biden is ahead in the polls by 11% or 4% with a sampling error plus or minus 3.5%. You're not even you're the sampling bias, because they're only talking to people who will answer the phone with from an unknown number. You don't know whether or not that person is representative
I think the
of the
people that
total
are picking up
population
the
or not.
phone are more likely to vote for Trump than Biden. Anybody who's going to pick up an unrecognizable number is probably more likely to going to be voting for Trump in the first place.
What's your empirical evidence of that hypothesis?
Because people who are going to vote for Biden are probably busy.
And so what would make the population that's considering Biden versus Trump busier and less likely to answer their phone than people who are going to vote for Trump?
Because millennials don't pick up the phone. But we vote. We're going to vote in this election.
So what makes other people
I think boomers are more likely to pick up the phone.
You think
older people? I think older people are more likely to pick up the phone.
An unrecognized number.
Yeah.
Would they
Oma would pick up the phone. I don't pick up the phone. I get called like 5 to 8 times a day from random ass numbers, and I never pick up the phone.
Okay, so you're drawing from your anecdotal evidence that your grandmother, who doesn't answer unknown numbers on her cell phone.
Yeah, she does. I've been there. She does all the time.
Oh, interesting. Well, I've been there when she says, "I don't know that number. I'm not picking it up." So
okay.
Well, that is a testable hypothesis, and if it turns out that the election results don't match the reported polling, then your hypothesis will be disproved. So here's the other issue. Here's another issue.
What do you think the real? So this whole thing that you set up is because you think.
No, I want people to understand how polling works, and we're not done talking about that. I've done polling for 20 years, so this is firsthand knowledge for your homeschooling lesson. So, when they are conducting polls, they take a list. Now, in the pachinko example and in the manufacturing hoods example, we had the total population from 1,000 pulls of the pachinko machine or 1,000 hoods that ran through the assembly line.
Yeah.
That is an observable population. So that's the universe of, that you're trying to project towards and understand with your survey sampling. The issue is, in order to use those rules of the game, those confidence interval rules that are developed by observing those processes, you would need to take a random sample from the population. So if you had all of the phone numbers of all of the registered voters in the country, and you said, I'm going to sample those and I want the results of this sample to reflect that population, then I would take 380, randomly select 380 of those telephone numbers from my national list, and I would call those 380 people and have to complete a survey with that random sample to get the result. That is not what happens.
Okay.
What happens is they take 38,000 numbers of registered voters and they start calling them. And if somebody doesn't answer the phone, if the phone is busy, if if there's an answering machine, if the number's been disconnected, they just move on to the next number. They just plow through the list. So the allegory to that would be, from our pachinko example, if when you took you pulled one of the numbers out of your hat of the 1,000 pachinko pulls, and it said, okay, number 17, and you went over to your paper and you looked at number 17, but the number you had written down was smudged or illegible, then you just threw that paper away and you pulled another number to replace it. Okay. When you do that, those rules no longer apply. The rules of statistical sampling are thrown out the window when, instead of taking a random sample and drawing your observations from that random sample, you start replacing observations with convenience numbers, meaning they didn't answer the phone, so I just went on to the next one. Or they didn't want to talk, so I just went on to the next one. And when you complete your surveys with the first 380 people that you can talk to, now you've introduced a whole nother set of biases, and that rule of thumb from statistics that you use to say the confidence interval is plus or minus 3.5% goes out the window, because you don't know. You don't have that history since the 1800s of these repeated observations of true random sampling. So in order for that 3.5% confidence interval to actually work, you would have to do a random sample of households that had voted and actually go to those households. So 123 Main Street, this person is a registered voter, and you would go and knock on the door, and you'd have 380 addresses, and you would have to complete a survey with the people that lived at those addresses. If somebody didn't want to talk to you, you couldn't replace that household. You would just have to reduce your sample size. And you might get down to where from your initial sample, you only completed the survey with 100 of the original 380 people. Now you've got observations from 100 people, and you've got no observation from another 280. And again, even if you said, well, I'm just going to say this is a sample of 100 instead of 380 and broaden out the confidence interval to account for the lower sample size, you still got 280 people that you didn't get an observation from, and you have no idea what that 280 of the original 380 sample is going to do or represents. So you're basically operating in the dark when you do these convenience samples. And from a professional polling point of view, it's essentially a lie to the people that you are delivering these results to. You're telling them this has a confidence interval of plus or minus 3.5% at the 95% confidence level, but you have to, in order for that actually to be true, you would have to redefine the population. So you can't say this is of likely voters. Technically, for that 3.5% confidence interval to be valid, you would have to report that this is the results among people who would answer their phone and participate in a survey.
Okay.
All right. So when they say this represents registered voters, that is a lie. What this result represents is that subset of registered voters
that pick up the phone
who would answer.
Yeah, that's obvious.
Everybody
not obvious. Knows that.
No, they don't.
Yes, they do.
Chancellor.
Anyone who has everyone knows the polls are bullshit, man.
Okay. Then why even take them?
What do you mean?
What is the point of having these political polls reported over and over again in the press?
Because they don't have anything else better to report, man.
Then why misreport it?
Because there's no way to accurately poll. You don't know who's going to vote and what they're going to vote for. So You are assuming. So why are you so butthurt about the polls?
Because the pollsters are lying to the public.
Are you assuming that it's going to go the other way? You think
No,
Trump's going to win?
I don't have any idea what's going to happen
And nobody does.
because everybody thinks.
But you're assuming
Then
that
if nobody does, then why on MSNBC and Fox News did they say, 60% of
they don't have
registered
anything-
voters are going to vote for Biden?
because they don't have anything better to say, man. They don't have anything better to do. The last election was proof that the polls don't fucking work.
Okay.
Duh.
Well, now you know why.
The reason why the polls didn't work last election is because a lot of people were pissed and a lot of people did not like Hillary. And that's not going to happen.
Why wouldn't that be reflected in the polls?
What do you mean?
Why?
Because the people who pick up the phone were all Hillary supporters, dude. They were all older women and people who didn't have anything better to do.
Well, when usually,
and that's the same people that they're polling that are picking up on these polls, which these polls are bullshit too. It's older women who have not. I don't mean women. I don't know why I keep saying that.
Well,
but that's because they were the people that were pro Hillary last time. Older people are the ones who pick up the phone. Millennials do not pick up the phone. Zoomers do not pick up the phone. The people ages 18 to probably 50 don't pick up the phone. Okay, and that's a large majority of the population.
Right.
And we are. I mean, I really hope. I really, really hope. Look. Biden isn't my cup of tea, but I really, really, really hope that my generation and people with brains vote for him. I just hope people vote for him because anything and everything to get Trump out.
All right. Well, politics aside, we're talking about the technicalities of polling right now. And you've alluded to another important point. So one of the things that they do when they do the polling is they do what's called weighting. And they typically weight based on demographics and age group. Right? So if when you're polling 380 people, you expect to get a representation of races and ages that matches the census.
So the ones that they have a smaller portion of, they give them more weight.
Yes.
Yeah, that makes sense.
They multiply. So if they can only get 2 millennials to answer the phone, but millennials represent 40% of the population, then when they tally the results, they count the answers.
That's the same basic. That's the exact same. That's the same thing that they do in the polls to begin with.
What do you mean? What do you mean by begin with?
It's assuming the same thing. Weighting is assuming the same thing that the polls itself assumes.
Well, not really. Weighting is essentially saying that we are going to take a further subsample. So in essence, it's like trying to clump together 10 different surveys at the same time. So you're further dividing the 380 people you're polling.
Yeah, but you can't ever...
So if there's only, let's say
there's no way to actually predict any of this. There's no way to accurately predict any of this. Polls are bullshit. In their core, it's bullshit.
Okay. Political polling.
Polling.
Well, when you say polling, if you also mean, polling.
It's all assumption.
Well, let's go back to the statistics. There's no assumptions about sampling the pachinko results.
Yeah, there is.
What are the assumptions about sampling the pachinko results?
It's the same principle. That's what you proved in the first half of what we were talking about. It's the exact same principle, and why polls are bullshit.
No, that's not the lesson. You misunderstood something. If you have 1,000 polls, okay.
Yeah. The polls in itself is bullshit.
What are you talking about?
It's all random. The pachinko is all random. It's all random. You said that when you introduce player B versus player A. It's all random.
Okay, well,
doesn't matter.
Player A versus player B have...
Player A versus himself. If he pulled 2,000 times versus 1,000 times, his 2,000 would be different than the first 1,000.
That's the point. It wouldn't be. The second 1,000 to the first 1,000 would be very close.
How do you know that?
Because of the way that
If it's all random, then it doesn't matter.
it's not all random. It's still the laws of physics. All right.
How is it the laws of physics?
Because
If it's the laws of physics, then it would go in the same hole every time. It's not the laws of physics. It's bullshit and it's all random. It is.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is.
All right. Well, if you went and got a pachinko machine,
it's the same thing as flipping a coin. You can
right.
you can break it down to the same thing.
You flip a coin 100 times and it's going to be somewhere around 50-50.
No, it's not. It's going to be different for every single person. It's all random.
It's not random.
Yes, it is.
So let me explain what will happen. Because the pachinko ball is inside a box. Pins are in the same place. The ball weighs the same amount. Okay.
Yeah.
There are small variances. There are small variances that determine where the ball goes. But over a large set of observations, you're going to find a consistent distribution of where the ball goes. So if you do 1,000 pulls and 6.8% of the time it goes in the 25% hole, and then you do another 1,000 pulls, it's going to go in the 25% hole somewhere around 7% of the time.
How do you know that?
Because they've done the experiment.
Since the 1800s, and every single time they do it with 1,000 pulls, it's always around 6%.
Yes.
No, it's not. That's
bullshit.
It
is. If you have the same player who has the same practice, the same habits of how they pull the lever, and you measure their pulls, and they do 1,000 pulls and you take a tally, and they do another 1,000 pulls and you take another tally, and you do a third 1,000 pulls and you take another tally. Each time you do those tallies, the percentage of time that the ball goes in the 25% hole, because you're looking at a huge number of executions, it's going to be very similar percentages of the time. And
so that every single time the person pulls the ball, it should go into the same hole then. No. Why not?
Because of the noise, because of the small variances. But so in general,
random. The action in itself is random.
The variances, well, if we had omniscient powers and we could determine, the spin of the ball and the spin of the earth and the temperature and all of those small exogenous inputs into the experiment, you would actually be able to determine it, because it all goes by the law of physics.
No, it's random, man.
It's not random.
It's random in itself. If you pull the ball 1,000 times and it only goes in the hole 6% of the time, it's completely random. It's the action in itself is random. That's why the polls don't. Now that's why none of it matters.
If that was true, there would be no such thing as professional golfing.
What?
If what you're saying,
pachinko is different from golf. Golf, you have control of the ball and the spin and how you swing.
Right. The pachinko ball is being launched with the plunger with the same force each time.
Yeah, so then it's random.
It's going into a playing field that has the pins in the exact same spot.
Yes, but the person pulling it is not aiming.
Right.
So then it's random.
No, it's not random.
Yes, it is.
What makes it random?
Because if it lands in different holes every time, it's random. That's what randomness is.
The reason it lands in different holes every time is because of the variances in gravity and the energy and the Earth. Remember, we're spinning. The Earth is spinning around. We're flying through space.
Yeah.
There's micro forces operating.
Making it random.
But it's not.
But it is.
If it was,
you have no control. You cannot. If you don't have control over the action itself, then it's random. You don't have control over the ball.
Right.
In itself. So it doesn't matter.
But in the overall scheme of the engineering of the pachinko box, you have constraints. The box is the same size. It doesn't change between polls.
Yes, but
Every poll for
yes,
1,000
that's
polls,
fine,
you're
and
launching the.
that's what makes the principle of the ball going wherever random, which is why the box even exists. It's because you don't know.
You don't know on any single poll where it's going to go, but
Yes,
over a period of 1,000 polls, patterns emerge.
they wouldn't.
They do.
No, they don't.
Chancellor,
They
you're
can't.
talking out of your ass.
No, you don't understand, man. You're talking on. You're talking on
Look,
a. You're
since the 1800s, they've been doing these experiments.
okay.
All right, patterns emerge.
Okay.
Take my word for it. If you don't
Okay.
believe me, go look it up.
Okay.
You're just wrong.
All right. That's fine. You're getting a little angry there, man.
Well, I mean, it's frustrating that it won't sink through your skull. Patterns emerge.
Okay.
There's a constraint.
Uh huh.
Ball is going into a play field that has the exact same pin positions,
Yes.
the same hole positions. The
Yes.
balls are the same weight.
Yes, and that's what makes it random because it doesn't go in the same hole every time.
Okay, random is the wrong word. Unobservable micro influences.
That's what randomness is.
No, it's not.
Yes. Unobservable micro influences is what is going to make the difference when people walk into the voting booth.
What does that mean?
It means the fact that they just found the fact that he only paid $750 on taxes.
That's actually not what the article said.
What article?
The New York Times article.
What did the New York Times article say?
He said his additional tax liability was $750. He had already paid millions in taxes.
No, he didn't.
Yeah.
No, he didn't.
Read the article.
Okay.
It
Doesn't matter.
It doesn't
that in itself, the fact that I thought that, even whether or not it's not true, is proof.
Right, and
that average voter could see that, get pissed off, and go and say, you know what, screw Trump.
Right.
Yeah.
And the same thing happens with the polls. They're lying to you with the polling numbers as well.
Yes, and you are assuming that I think that in your mind, you're assuming that Trump is going to win because you, for some reason, assume that a large portion of the population must be racist. Because everyone who's voting for him is a racist.
No, they're not.
And a misogynist. So you're just assuming that a large portion of the population is moronic and is okay with a criminal running our country.
Since Woodrow Wilson. I mean, if you're talking about being ethical and calling somebody criminal if they're unethical, then the presidents have been criminals by your definition since Woodrow Wilson.
Okay, that's fine. I'm not saying that every president was awesome, and I never said that.
Right.
He's still a criminal.
By your definition. If he was
by the law's definition.
Nope. Innocent until proven guilty. If he was a criminal, he would have been charged and convicted.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. If he was a criminal, he would have been charged and convicted.
Okay. Okay.
All right. So, anyway, shouldn't be a surprise to anybody. Nobody should be expecting an outcome because everything they've been telling you about the polling numbers is essentially a lie.
See, what this is coming across as is you are trying to do right-wing talking points right now by calling the polls in themselves bullshit, so that when the Republicans try to steal the election and hand it to Trump by putting in a new Supreme Court justice, that the overwhelming majority that voted for Biden, I think that it will probably be closer to 60 or 70% voting for Biden. You're trying to discredit that right now.
And this is a good point. What leads you to believe that 60% were going to vote for Biden?
Because I have faith. No, I have faith in people. It has nothing to do with the polls. I don't look at the polls. I don't watch MSNBC or Fox News or any of that bullshit. I don't watch any of that crap, man. I'm just having faith in people. I'm hoping that people will be good people and will not vote for Trump.
And you're projecting that onto Biden and Harris? This idea of goodness?
Yes. I'm not.
Okay. Are you familiar with either of their records?
It doesn't matter.
Why?
because they're not Trump, and Trump should
Okay,
be
so
in
you're
jail.
not voting for Biden and Harris. You're just voting against Trump.
Yes, absolutely. And I think a large majority of the population is and will.
And why would they do that?
Because Trump is evil and a criminal and
Because,
a racist and a misogynist and a pig.
okay, and most of those things have already been debunked.
What things? His racist, misogynist Twitter feed? That's been debunked?
Your interpretation of what he tweets.
So is. Oh my God. How far deep are you, man? How twisted is your mind that you can even think that he is a that he is he is the he's such a bad person. He is such a bad person, and I don't even know how you could ever defend him.
Well, it's called benefit of the doubt, which is one of the tenets of a civil society. You have not spent a single minute with Trump.
Neither have you.
No, I haven't. I don't have an opinion about whether or not he is any of those things you said because I have
He
not.
said grab him by the pussy. That should instantly make you want to not vote for him.
Okay.
In its core, at its core, that's just one of the million examples of how terrible of a human being he is.
Okay. You authored a book.
That was really bad.
Okay. And
Yeah.
should that be held against you for the rest of your life?
It has been. I have been called out for it. So you want to just
Well,
attack your son,
he's been-
or do you want to?
No,
You're
my
just going to
point-
keep defending a racist, misogynist pig, and you're going to take his side so far that you're going to instantly attack your own son.
How am I attacking you? I'm pointing out that you are applying a standard to a man you've never met and spent any time with.
Dude, I have seen his Twitter. Every single day he proves how terrible of a human being he is. Every single day.
Well, I see some of his tweets and they have not struck me, pulled at some emotional chord the way they do for you. I think you've got a preconceived notion before you read them. You are assigning meaning to those words that he's tweeting out that he doesn't assign to them.
Okay, so you
I
think
think it's
that
called-
if you think do you think that you could drop the N bomb because you don't assign the same meaning to that as that? That is ridiculous. It's about It's about the fact that, oh my God, must not be empathetic at all. You must have no empathy. You're saying that I shouldn't be offended by them because he doesn't assign the same meaning to them as everybody else. That in itself.
Well, that's a good point, and that's one of the things that's happened is the reassignment or evolution or attempted evolution of the meaning of words. Like, words don't mean the same thing now that they used to. So
Yeah.
millennials have a different vocabulary than boomers.
Yes.
Okay. So when a boomer uses words that he or she grew up using, and then you as a millennial who have a different vocabulary and a different interpretation of those words, hear those words and react to them, then you're having a millennial reaction to a boomer comment. The boomer didn't mean what you took it to mean.
Okay, that doesn't matter.
Why?
Because I could still be offended by those words.
You are welcome to be offended by them.
And you should not continue to say them if they continue to offend.
No,
because that means that you're an unempathetic person and you do not care about the feelings of others.
True, to the degree that you're going to impose your definition of words on me.
Yeah, you should not be able to say the N-bomb. You should not be able to say that C word.
The C word? What's the C word?
See you next Tuesday.
Oh, okay. So in Australia, that's a term of endearment.
That's fine.
Guys call each other that.
That's fine.
Okay.
But if a woman walks by and they say that and she gets offended, then they need to stop and shut the fuck up.
It's impolite.
Oh my God.
It's impolite.
Yeah, and is it impolite to drop the N-bomb?
Yes.
It's
Certainly.
far past that. You do you,
And nobody uses
you
that
really
word. The
do
only people
not.
who use that word anymore are the African American community and the tiny, tiny percentage of people that are really racist.
So you think there's a tiny, tiny percentage of people that are racist?
Yes.
So then you know that Biden's going to win then, because anyone who votes for Trump is racist.
You don't get to say that.
If you vote for Trump, you're a racist.
No.
Yes.
By what criteria?
Because Trump is a racist. You're propping up a racist. If you vote for a racist, you're a racist.
And your interpretation of him being a racist is based on your interpretation of his tweet.
Him saying that there were good people on both sides.
What he was saying was that the people who didn't want to take statues down in their community had
statues of Confederate generals who represented the Confederacy and they tried to maintain slavery. So yes,
there's a lot of people.
Yes, if you want a Confederate statue to stay up, you're racist as well.
If you don't study history, it repeats itself, right? You know that.
Yes,
Okay,
we don't need reminders. We don't need reminders, man. That's really
like
really
history
messed up.
books. You don't need reminders like history books.
We don't need to prop them up and put them on and So you think there should be a statue of Hitler in Germany? That's basically what you're saying. Do you think there should be a statue of Hitler in Germany?
I think if somebody had, if some small community somewhere had the distaste to erect a statue, but it was in their community, I don't think somebody should be able to come in from outside and tear it down without making a case for it and having a vote.
Oh my God.
You don't get to impose your will on other people. You're a fascist.
That's what it
you
is.
are a fascist.
That's what it is. Putting the statue up is imposing your will on other people.
If you have a community of...
And it's the same as waving the Confederate flag or the Nazi flag. So you're okay with the Nazi flag. You're basically saying you're okay with the Nazi flag and the Confederate flag.
If I lived in a community where they voted to put up a statue of Hitler and wave the Nazi flag, I would move.
It doesn't matter. But you're okay with the fact you would be okay with them having the flag up.
I'm okay with freedom of speech.
Wow. Okay, this is what racism sounds like. People.
Freedom of speech?
Yes.
Okay. So
oh my God.
You are fine taking away people's right to express themselves.
Oh my God. Racist. Yes. Racism should not be propped up. Racism should not be propped up.
How is it propping it up?
Oh my God.
You want to know what propping up racism is? Propping up racism is erasing the ability for people to say what they think, so it's in the shadows. And then they talk one-on-one. And nobody ever has the opportunity to disprove their perspective because the conversation never happens. And so they go into the shadows and they start building their personal networks. And racism really does become a problem because you've erased the conversation from political discourse.
So you think a member of the KKK should be able to run for president then? That's basically what you're saying.
A member of the KKK can run for president. Yes, they should be able to stand up and make a fool out of themselves so everybody can see what a clown they are.
Wow.
Do you think a member of the KKK would win if they ran for president?
Trump's in the White House. I wouldn't be surprised.
So you've just bought into this narrative that the country is terrible. Narrative? The narrative that the country is overwhelmed.
Anyone who votes for Trump is a racist.
No, they're not.
Yes, they are.
No, they're not.
Yes, they are. If you're listening to this and you're planning on voting for Trump, you're a racist.
No, you're not.
Yes, you are.
People vote for Trump for all kinds of reasons.
It doesn't matter. He's a racist. If you're propping up a racist,
you're saying that Brandon Tatum, Candace Owens, Larry Elder, you're saying all those people are racists. What?
What are those your three examples of African Americans who are going to vote for Trump? That sounds like a very white person thing to just throw at me.
Well, you are calling anybody who votes for Trump a racist, and 30% during polling. And again, we just talked about how bad polling might be, but there are plenty of people who are black who are going to vote for Trump, and you're saying they're racists
Okay.
because you're saying stupid stuff.
No, I'm not.
Yes, you're being dumb. And I don't understand what information has been fed into your brain that.
Trump's tweets, the fact that he says there are good people on both sides, that's a.
So let's go back to that. So he was saying he had.
Anybody who wanted to keep the statues up was a racist. So by him saying that those
Whoa,
people are
back
okay,
up. What?
that
Back
in
up.
itself, he didn't necessarily have to say that just the people who were carrying tiki torches.
Who he said should be
What?
whatever the word is. He disavowed them. He
Uh-huh.
said they're
Yeah.
terrible people.
Okay.
He did. And the
Okay.
fact that you didn't.
This subset of racists are terrible people, but this other set of racists aren't terrible people.
And
That's what you're saying.
And you are calling someone
Who wants to keep a Confederate
wants-
statue up a racist? Yes, because that person is a racist. If you want to keep a Confederate statue up, you're a racist.
or
If you want to wave a Confederate flag, you're a racist. If you want to wave a Nazi flag, you're a Nazi. Like, just own it.
well, if somebody believes that some symbol, what do you extend that to the "Don't Tread on Me" flag? You're saying if they wave the Confederate flag, they're racist. What if they wave the "Don't Tread on Me" flag?
What does the Don't Tread on Me flag represent?
It represents to some people the same thing that the Confederate flag
Well,
represents.
then sure.
But you aren't familiar with the history of the "Don't Tread on Me" flag, so you're just assigning based on some.
Did
Emotional-
the Confederate Army wave the Don't Tread on Me flag while they were marching?
Some of them may have.
Oh, then it's associated with the Confederate flag, and then anyone who wants to wave that is also probably a racist.
What about the Patrick Henry pamphlet? Give me and the saying, "Give me liberty or give me death." Is that racist?
It might be. Did he own slaves? Did he own slaves?
I don't know. Probably he was.
Well, then he's probably a racist. Anyone who, like, how far? This country was founded on racists by racists.
Aristotle.
If Aristotle, what about Aristotle?
Was he a racist?
I don't know. Was he?
What's the criteria for being a racist?
Believing people who are of other skin tone, people who are different than you, or have a different skin tone than you, don't deserve the same opportunities you do, should be put down, and you believe that you are above them.
Okay. And Aristotle may have been a racist. I don't know.
Okay.
It's possible. So, but by that definition, up until America came along, everybody was racist.
Probably.
Okay.
That's fine. Yeah. And America is there's still a lot of racists in America. That's the thing. This country was founded by racists. This country was built on the backs of slaves. Do you know that the 13th Amendment, the one that basically freed the slaves, right? That it still allows slavery? It within the actual amendment, it says that slavery is banned unless you're arrested.
Interesting. Is that how they justify the prison system?
Yes.
Interesting.
There's still
There's probably some lawyers might in the comments. Hopefully, some lawyers will weigh in. I'm not sure that's a constitutional
read the 13th
interpretation.
Amendment.
Okay. So, emotional decision making versus rational decision making. It really comes down to are you overwhelmed by your emotions, or can you think rationally about thinking about economic incentives and
again
the way the thing actually works?
So putting the dollar above people. That's again what you want to go back to that well.
Well, in the modern world, living and surviving and having a life that you want to live and a comfortable life for your family requires dollars.
Uh-huh.
Okay. So you can want to put people over money all you want, but at some point you have to stand up and go out and earn a living and take care of yourself. And if putting people over money ruins the economy so there's no jobs, then you are going to not
The economy is
survive.
ruined because of Trump right now. He ruined the economy.
Actually, the economy is ruined because of the lockdowns. The governors locking down their states.
And if Trump had come out right when the virus hit and said, you need to wear masks and stay the fuck away from everybody, instead of saying, oh, it's not real, don't worry about it, then the virus would not have spread and we would be open again like the rest of the world.
Okay.
But because our leader was a dumbass,
The empirical evidence suggests you're
200,000
wrong.
people died.
Because
of Trump,
No.
200,000 people died.
The
So if you want to vote for Trump and you want to be you want to vote for not only a racist but a murderer, go ahead.
Okay. There are countries where masks were made mandatory and their infection rates are similar to the US. So from a scientific point of view, your hypothesis has been disproved already.
No, that sounds like a bullshit right-wing talking point.
No, it's science. Is science right wing?
No, science is very, very liberal because it's based on facts and not bullshit.
Okay, well then quit spewing bullshit and look it up.
You're the one who's spewing bullshit.
No, I'm not.
Yeah, you are.
I just cited
the United States has the highest death numbers out of any out of the entire world.
Not incidence rates. Numbers because we have more people.
Yeah. It's so 200,000 people did not need to die. That's what you need to look at. You need to stop trying to justify racism by polling.
Back up a minute.
Racism and murder. You're trying to justify it by
Chancellor,
yelling statistics, and it does. Oh my
yelling
God.
and being loud is not an effective form of discussion and making an argument. Just because you can yell louder does not mean you're right.
What does that have to do with anything?
Think about it. You're saying that there's some policy that would affect the infection rates from COVID.
Yeah, if Trump had come out day one and said wear a mask.
Okay, in other countries where they came out on day one and said wear a mask,
and 200,000 people died.
As a percentage of their population.
Again, that doesn't matter. It's about the number.
How does that not matter?
Because 200,000 people died, man. It doesn't matter.
200,000 200,000 people died out of 325 million.
That's fine. It doesn't matter.
In a country with
doesn't matter. 200,000 people still died. If one person died, if one life could have been prevented, that's the thing that you just don't seem to care about.
You couldn't stop all death.
No, but you could have slowed it down. And that's the problem.
You couldn't.
And that's why you don't care about climate change, because you don't care about the future. You don't care about the larger population. You only care about what's right in front of your face because it's not directly affecting you. And that's the problem that most people who have your point of view share. And that's why you think it's okay that Trump is in power, because it's not directly hurting you. It's not about you, man. It's about everybody else.
Okay, it's also, this discussion's not about Trump. What we're trying to discuss is policy. And if you would slow down and quit spewing and listen for a minute, then maybe you could actually learn something.
Okay.
All right.
You want to be even more arrogant?
Well,
go ahead. What else? What other
incidence rates?
Do you want?
Policies are designed to affect a population with an incidence rate.
Okay.
So we have 325 million people.
Okay.
Get a calculator. 200,000 out of 350.
It doesn't matter. It's about preventing death of one person, man. That's what I'm saying.
Okay. How would you?
You just don't get it.
You could have driven COVID deaths to zero, and deaths from suicide up 10 times. And 1 million people would have died instead of 200,000. You have to look at it in terms of the entire system, not just one issue. The only way to drive COVID deaths to zero would be to take measures and steps that would have led to 10 times more deaths from other things.
That's an assumption that you're making.
It's not an assumption because it's happened. If you look, there is a negative correlation between the lockdowns and suicide. People who've been locked up in their apartments by themselves are committing suicide at higher rates. More people are dying because of the lockdowns.
No.
And there was an academic study.
Bullshit.
There was an academic study released a couple of weeks ago that looked at life years.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you know that we wouldn't have the lockdown for as long as we would have it if Trump had come out on day one and said wear a mask? That's the point that I'm trying to make.
Yeah.
If he had been an adult and come out and said wear a mask, stay away from each other, instead of spewing the bullshit,
well, you do know that
then our lockdown wouldn't have happened either. So not only would we have not had all the deaths from COVID, but all of your bullshit suicide rates going up would not have happened. So again, all of those suicide deaths are also Trump's fault.
Sure. Everything's Trump's fault.
Through your definition.
No.
Yeah.
So the CDC, at the time he said don't wear a mask, the CDC said masks aren't helpful. So it was Fauci that said that initially. You are aware of that, right?
Fauci.
Yes, it was Dr. Fauci that said don't wear a mask. He lied because there was mask shortages and they wanted to reserve the masks for the people in the hospitals.
Okay. So again, the government.
Yes.
Run by Trump. So again,
Fauci.
It's Trump's fault.
Well, okay.
If Trump had just come out and said,
stay
inside,
right,
wear a mask on day one.
If Trump was, in addition to being a businessman, was also an epidemiologist,
if he listened to the rest of the world, everyone else is done. Everyone else is out of lockdown. Man, we're the only ones who are dealing with this shit still because our leader is a moron.
Actually, the reason that we're dealing with the lockdowns is because the governors love the power of locking everybody down.
No, that's bullshit.
Remember, we live in a republic, Chancellor. We do not live in a dictatorship. We do not live
no matter how
in
much
a
you
monarchy.
Want it to be a dictatorship run by Trump, it's not going to happen, man.
So that's my point. It's not a dictatorship. The governors are the ones who make the decisions about whether to lock down. It's not Trump's decision.
If Trump had come out on day one and said, please, people, wear a mask and stay away from each other.
And if Anthony Fauci had told Trump, say this, he would have said it.
No, he wouldn't have.
Why?
Because Trump wanted to rile up his base and he wanted to make
the
pandemic a democratic thing, and he tried to spin it that way, and then he's trying to spin and blame it on China. Dude, he is the worst human being on the planet, and I do not understand how you can just keep defending him.
I'm not defending him. I'm trying to communicate the facts of what happened. And you've got a very clear case of TDS.
I don't care what you think that stands for.
Trump Derangement Syndrome.
Okay. It's just sad, man.
Well, the election is coming up, so we will basically see how things play out. But don't be surprised if everybody's expectations and this false sense of entitlement that Joe Biden seems to have, thinking that he's ahead in all these polls, doesn't turn out to be correct. And it doesn't mean that the Republicans stole the election. It just means the polls were wrong. And I gave you very specific examples of why the polls are wrong. The polls are wrong. The pollsters are lying by saying that the results of their polling represents the total population. It only represents that subset of the population that will answer the phone.
Yeah, that's obvious. And it's obvious from the get-go, and everyone understands
that. They don't understand that because if they understood
the people within
your
little bubble don't understand that.
The
But
people that the people
millennials who think and are like, duh, the polls aren't right.
Okay,
Understand that.
good.
It's a duh.
Well, I doubt it's a duh, because if it was a duh, then the media would stop
No, because the
saying
media
it.
isn't talking to the millennials. The media doesn't put shit on MSNBC and Fox News for the millennials because we don't watch that shit, man. They're
Okay, so
doing it for
you
you.
guys just
They're doing it for you
the
and for mom. They're not doing that stuff for me. We don't give a shit what kind of spin, because we know that it's bullshit. We know that the news is bullshit. The news has been bullshit since Bush. Like, we've grown up with the fact that the news and the media is all bullshit, and we
It was
understand that.
actually before Bush, but that's just your time perspective, because that's the only president you knew. So, yeah, the whole time you've been alive and before that, the news was bullshit.
And everyone and my generation has known that because we have a little square in our pocket and we can look up any fact at any second.
Okay, so in the next episode, we could talk about how the information that's delivered on your little box in your pocket is manipulated.
You need to watch The Social Dilemma.
Okay.
Everybody out there, watch that.
Good. All right. We are at an hour. This was a lively discussion.
Uh-huh.
All right. So, do you have a particular song you would like to share?
I have no idea. We're just gonna leave it to the roll of the dice. Whatever comes up, comes up.
Cue one up. All right. Here we go. This is Chance the Closer.
Peace.
Just trust me. Chance closer. But